I'm Di Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. We're a platform that showcases and celebrates the strength, resilience, and achievement of women from all walks of life. In each episode, I pose questions to my guests to peel away the layers to reveal the knowledge and the experience that shapes their narrative. So if you're feeling unseen, unheard, or simply looking for inspiration, then the Power of Women podcast is a great place to join the conversation. Today's guest is an absolute powerhouse. And what really thrills me is it's going to give me an opportunity to tap into and reach out to the Australian diaspora. And there are so many amazing executives who've taken their expertise from Australia to the international marketplace. And today, my guest is one of those absolute individuals that we need to showcase on Power of Women. She was previously a sports and corporate risk lawyer in Australia. She's based in Saudi, and she must be the youngest CEO of a family office absolutely anywhere in the world. And we'll come back to that. And she's recently been a keynote speaker in the Cayman Islands, London, Dubai, and New York. Joining me from Riyadh is Cassandra Heilbronn. Cassandra, welcome to the Power of Women podcast.
Thank you so much, Di. It's really good to be here.
Brilliant. Cassandra, I always ask my guests similar questions to get started because I love to know a little bit about their backstory. So where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Bundaberg, in Queensland, about 4 hours north of Brisbane. But I left there actually the moment I finished high school. I was 17. I had my university placement and I was just gone.
Gone.
Yes. At the time, you're a young kid, you don't realize significance and importance of your hometown, which I do now get as an adult, but I just wanted out.
Yeah, you wanted something bigger.
That's it.
Yeah. So what was the most powerful lesson you've taken away from your childhood?
Oh gosh, I guess at the time when you're a child and you don't understand the reasoning, it would be what I would have said as a teenager or as a kid, the tough love from my father. But as an adult now, I wouldn't phrase it as tough love. I would phrase it as him giving me the tools and information necessary to develop discipline, which has
Mm,
helped me so much in my career. Because without that, I wouldn't have, the life I live now.
yeah.
Although as a child, you come back and you get 80% on a test, and dad was like, why didn't you get higher? Why didn't you get 100%? And I'm like, come on, I'm still top of the class.
Yeah, right.
But it was just striving for more and more. I guess he knew before I did. I had an
What your
ability to,
potential was.
that's it.
Mm, It sounds like he was a champion from right out the gate.
As an adult, I definitely say that now.
Yeah.
As a child, I was like, why am I doing all this? All the sport, the reading, the study, but it's definitely paid off.
Yeah. Cassandra, your career trajectory on any measure has been absolutely extraordinary, and congratulations on that.
Yeah.
How did your background and upbringing influence your professional journey?
I guess it comes back to what I've said about discipline, but I recall when I was in grade two and I was working on an assignment. Back then there was projects. You might remember the big cardboard projects we had to do as kids.
Mm.
And I just wouldn't listen to any feedback. So my father just turned to me and he said, "You're on your own.
We'll
You
come back
work it
to
out,
that.
work it out." And I had to work it out. And it wasn't just that day, it was every day afterwards. So, it taught me how to ask for help after being so ignorant to help at a young
Mm.
age. But just finding out ways, there are roadblocks in everything in life, particularly when I worked as a lawyer, but our job is to get it done. And certainly that mentality has carried through and helped me.
Mm. So, if you cast your mind back to the journey that you've taken, How do you believe you've risen to such an senior executive level at such a young age?
I think part of it is I didn't really have a choice, but I don't mean that negatively. So I grew up in a very low income household, although as a kid you would never understand that or know that. It's just as an adult reflecting, you're like, okay, we didn't have as much money as other people. We weren't able to do the family holidays and things like that. But I always had to fight to make sure I could get where I wanted, particularly from an economic sense. You know, moving away to university, I was 17 years and I think 2 months old, and I had $400. Like, who moves to a
Mm,
city as a kid with that, just not having
mm.
that backing, having to work more than two jobs at a time to get through, to study at the same time, to find a job without connections, particularly in the legal world. And this was early 2000s when it still was, who
You
you
had no
know and
leg
what
up into a
relationships.
firm. You had to do this all on your own.
No, that's
Mm.
it. And I mean, the story of how I obtained my first legal position was just not what you would see for, a top tier private school
Okay, so
lawyer,
tell
which
us,
I
what was
technically
it?
am.
Can you
So,
tell us about that?
oh God. So I was actually working,
Are you prepared to tell us about that?
yeah, yeah, I was working at the Port Office Hotel during university and met some friends. The Sunshine Coast, a couple of the guys played football for the then Sunshine Coast Falcons. So I went with the girlfriends who were my friends to a football match on a Sunday. And we'd been to a going away party the night before. So we weren't that healthy looking the next morning. And I remember I was wearing a pair of footy shorts, a Bond singlet, a backwards hat. I had really long brown hair. It was just a
Looking
typical
like a
uni
lawyer.
student. Oh,
Mm.
and at halftime, oh, sorry, just before halftime, one of the guys who played, his mother said, look, see that man down there? That's Peter Boyce. He's president of the football club, but he has his own firm at the Sunshine Coast. Go introduce yourself. She's brushing my hair with her fingers to try and make me more presentable. And so I just walk up to this guy and I was like, "Hi, I'm Cassandra. I'm in my last year of university. My friend's mother said to come say hi. Would love to work for you." He just looks at me and he goes, "All right, come in for an interview on Tuesday." So I did. And at the interview, he said to me, "Where will you be in 10 years' time?" And I put this down to lack of corporate maturity, but it worked well for me. I said, "I'll be in your chair." Now I think the audacity, like if someone said that to
Oh
me,
no,
I'd
it's
be
what they
like,
want to
I
hear.
like, oh,
Mm,
I just can't believe I said it. And that's
mm,
how I started.
mm. It's interesting the sort of on reflection, and I know a job that I particularly wanted for a fashion brand that I particularly wanted many, many moons ago. And I rang up the national sales manager as a 21-year-old and invited her out to lunch. And you wouldn't have the balls to do it now, I'm sure. I mean, more front than mire, literally.
That's it. That's it. It worked out well, but maybe it's good we had, the youth side then, so we did have a bit more up and go to say what
Yeah,
we were really thinking.
yeah. So were there that is a pivotal moment because that gave you a head start, but were there other pivotal moments that have helped you along the way to reach the level that you are now?
Look, I always say getting an executive coach at a young stage in my career really helped because you don't know what you don't know. And you will have your annual performance reviews, but particularly in law, the partners aren't going to give you feedback on personality or the soft side, the organizational psychology type things, where an
Mm.
executive coach rather can really help with that. So that was one of the really turning points for me. But also, I had a relationship breakup in my late 20s. And at the time, I was changing firms. And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to go full tilt into focusing on my career for the next couple of years. Now is my opportunity just to really embed myself. Social media was just taking off. I was getting a lot of speaking gigs and actually new clients from Twitter, which was completely unheard of in the legal space. We're talking 2011, 2012 type type
Mm.
situation. And I developed the Lawyer Cass brand. And that's just what really, really changed for me and gave me new opportunity to gain new clients and exposure. Because the reality is, everyone in my law firm at my level of seniority, we all graduated with the same degree. We all had top marks. How can I differentiate myself from the person in the office next to me? And that was when I decided to use social media.
We're going to come back to that, but I am guessing Lawyer Cass is part of your personal brand piece that you talk about. Could we come back to that in a moment?
Of course, that sounds good.
Excellent. So, was the career trajectory a straight line up, or have there been plateaus along the way?
Well, it's funny you mentioned plateauing because that's something I was trying to internally reconcile back in 2018, just before I moved to Saudi. I had the profile, I had the speaking gigs, I had clients, I had recognition within my firm. And I felt like I was starting to plateau after taking a really big vertical line. And I was actually talking to my executive coach. I was like, I'm in my early 30s and I feel like my career is plateauing. She's like, Cassandra, you're ahead of the curve and it's okay to plateau. So while I haven't fully experienced the plateau, I know it will be coming soon, and I just
Mm.
have to learn how to deal with that. And it's okay. It doesn't mean I'm not successful or that there's been a dip in my career. It's just something that I will have
I
to
think it might
navigate.
just be that you've actually reached the upper echelons pretty early, Cassandra. So
That's
it's,
yeah.
are you an only child or are there other kids in your family?
I'm the eldest daughter of three. So I think
Okay.
I fall into a lot of those memes when they talk about eldest daughter
Eldest child.
syndrome.
Mm,
Yeah, that's me.
mm, mm. But it's interesting. You've done things at a young age that a lot of people don't dip into until further in their career. And you mentioned you got an executive coach. What was driving you? Where did these ideas come from? Were they suggested to you, or was this all self-development and self-sought?
No, it was never suggested to me. The first time I ever heard of an executive coach was when I was working at one of the law firms, and part of my role was to exit senior executives for a bit of gray area conduct. And what we would do as part of the performance management
That's
and
another
unfair
podcast.
dismiss, that's it, was to suggest an executive coach. And I thought at the time it was just basically corporate speak for we're about to exit you out. But as I got to talk to these executive coaches more, I realized they were able to provide an external insight into behaviors and communication methods. And I use that term corporate maturity. An example is I'm someone who, if you say good morning to me of a morning, I've got no problems if you walk into my office and just ask a question. No issues
Mm.
with that at all.
Don't need the
But I did work,
niceties.
that's it. We don't need to re engage every time. But I was working with another senior female. She was more senior than me. We do our good mornings. We're beside each other every day. And if I popped in during the day and said, hey, I've got, this application. What are your thoughts? She'd go, well, hello to you, Cassandra. And I was like, we've already
Mm.
spoken, 3 times this morning. But this executive coach helped me with the different communication methods. And some people want to rebuild that connection. And I said to her, why do I have to do that? She's like, Cass, in 10 years' time, you will be a leader. She will be in the same position. Adopt your communication methods now, and you'll have success later on. I'm grateful for it. I didn't understand it at the time. I was a
Makes
typical
sense
Gen
now.
Y, why am I changing my behavior for someone? Now I couldn't think, I would never not do that.
Mm. And it's interesting. We often find we present in a manner to reflect the party that we're talking to, and even in the party that we write to. So I do a lot of informal writing these days, and I have a different way of opening an email and signing off. Yet historically in my more corporate era, it was a different cadence. And particularly when I was dealing with luxury clients, it was a very formal way of writing. And I found myself laughing in our communications, Cassandra, because typically of a representative of the role that you hold and your legal background, you've got that very formal way of addressing and closing an email. And I keep thinking, maybe I'm a bit informal when I speak to Cassandra.
No. I'm always about adapting to your audience. But one thing I can't change is I always write dear in emails.
I
It's
know
just a
you do.
personal thing. I know. I can't stop it. I mean, there comes a time in the email chain where you just write a sentence, but you judge that. There's an
Yeah,
appropriate
yeah. But isn't it
time for that.
interesting because that is all part of the personal branding of how we present ourselves, is it not?
Well, that's it. And actually, the funniest story I have on picking the crowds is when you're doing public speaking, you have to engage the audience, as you know. And I was doing the very first Money in Sport conference, and I was on stage talking about sponsorships on a panel, and there was three other gentlemen with me. I'm one of the only females, and I was talking about negotiating, which is one of my core strengths, but also something I have to do daily in work.
Mm.
And I was judging the crowd, and they're all sports execs, they're all sportsmen. So I said, look, you're out there on the golf course, you've negotiated this deal, you've said to the team owner or the apparel guy, I'll just give it to my lawyer now to finalize the terms. No, we're not finalizing the terms. We're negotiating the terms that you don't have the balls to. And I came back to the office and I said to my boss, I just said balls on stage and it was recorded and it's got the firm name. And he's like, Cass, I know you. It would be fine. And about 8 months later, I got an email from the head of sport for a major social media network. And he wrote, Dear Cassandra, good morning. Have you made anyone cry yet? And then he carried on. He's like, look, I need you. I don't have the balls to do this. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. It worked. It paid off. But it's just judging the
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. I can imagine though the reflection would be, was that a suicidal career move? Mm,
Oh, exactly.
yeah. So do you know what the qualities and habits are that you have that have contributed to your success? Can you recognize that in yourself?
I think one of the major things, and it involves a lot of the training from being a lawyer, particularly because I was in litigation, you have to get stuff done. As long as it's within the ethical bounds, we're complying with our ethical rules as a lawyer. When a client asks for something, you have to make it happen. It's not a matter of saying no. And I certainly, I started in criminal defense. There are a lot of things I don't morally agree with, but if it's within my ethical bounds, I just have to do it. And that comes now into my role. And I talk to my team quite a lot. um, Sometimes their first reaction is to say, oh, we tried once and we couldn't get it done. No, no, no. Our job is to get things done. As long as it's ethically fine, from a legal context, we just have to do it. And
Mm,
when I talk to other execs, they haven't had that training. They're probably not as strategic as one should be in an exec role. And all they can see is roadblocks. They can't see how to overcome that. So I'm grateful for my legal training,
mm,
showing me how to just get things done, but also managing the personalities and expectations of others around you.
mm. So that's a real outcome focus. Does that kind of resonate with you as a kid, or is that who you were growing up, getting things done?
Yes, I mean, I played hockey from a young age, and I was in a small town, so my parents would drop me to the hockey
That's
field
an
of a Saturday
aggressive, tough
morning.
sport, hockey.
Yes, it is. It is. But it was a matter of, find your own way home. And this was normal in the early 90s, especially in a town of 60,000 people. But there was plenty of people at my club. And after I played, I would watch the seniors and then I'd just be like, hey, can someone drive me home? I was in primary school. But again, it was problem solving skills that you didn't realize. I mean, parents could never do that now, but 1993, early 90s, this was completely fine.
Yeah,
But it
different
was
time.
find a way, use your surroundings to get things accomplished.
Yeah, there you go. Let's come back to this personal brand piece. Lawyer Cass. Is is that your personal brand? And talk to me because I know personal branding is an area of subject matter expertise that you actually talk on
Yeah.
stage to, is it not?
Yes, so Lawyer was my personal brand, and I spent quite a bit of time with that. So much so, I would go to conferences and see industry people, and they'd say Lawyer Cass, and it made me smile because as a lawyer in a top tier firm, you don't have an opportunity historically to be an individual. However, when I took on my current role, and while I do have my practicing certificate, I'm not working as a lawyer anymore. So I had to change all of my branding. And it also was kind of um, almost an internal experience for me as well, because all I ever wanted was to be a lawyer. And
Mm.
then I've got the branding because social media allowed me to do so. But now I'm not a lawyer. So I had to not reinvent myself, but shift it sideways because I couldn't call myself a lawyer. Technically, it did take a little bit of getting used to. People would say, "Hey, what do you do?" And the first couple of times, I'm like, "Well, I'm a lawyer by trade. I was a lawyer, but now I'm not a lawyer, but I still have my practicing certificate. My title's now CEO, but I still do some lawyer things." I can't answer
So
that. I look
what is
completely.
that? Did you feel it was diminishing your personal brand?
When you said that, it kind of gave an air of significance in
Had some
society. And
gravitas.
because, yes, and because I grew up completely opposite to that, I grew up in a
Mm,
housing commission area.
mm,
To say that I was a lawyer gave me a sense I still have my achievements. I just don't have that lawyer title.
yeah. Wow, have you come a long way? So, coming up, we're going to talk about how Cassandra has become the CEO of a family office in Saudi Arabia. And by the way, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button because it's free. So, Cassandra, in 2019, you were a sports and corporate risk lawyer at Minter Ellison in Australia, well-known law firm. How did the move to Saudi come about?
It's quite funny. I just moved to Melbourne early 2018. It was an internal move with the firm. It wasn't planned at all. And I was still traveling between the states. And I was actually boarding a plane and I received a call basically pitching my first role that I had here in Saudi. And the way they were talking, it almost sounded like a Nigerian prince scam, too good to be true. And I said to them, look, I'm boarding a flight. If you're being serious, please call me back in an hour and a half. And they did. And I was like, oh, I must apologize, for my earlier behavior. I just didn't think this was legitimate. And that was end of 2018. They told me about the role. It was going to be overseeing the drafting of the new laws and regulations for sports and entertainment for Al Ula, which is one of the cities or towns here in Saudi. By end of January, they were flying me to Dubai for the weekend for an interview. And thankfully, it was the Australia Day long weekend. And even more thankfully, the partner I worked for thought I was just nipping across to Dubai to see my
For
friends
a long
and have a bit of
weekend.
a social weekend. It was just saying that out loud is just quite funny in and of itself. Had the interview end of January. They offered me the job shortly thereafter, and we then had the visa process because I came back when Saudi wasn't even open for tourism when
Mm.
all this was happening. Actually didn't open for tourism until I had moved here, and I'd been here about 6 to 8 months or so. So I finished up with Minters. They put me on a leave of absence for 1 year, which I was very grateful for because I didn't know what to expect.
Was that a paid garden
And
leave or yeah?
no, no, unpaid leave for 1 year. So they offer lawyers a leave of absence. Basically, I think they
Leave the door
recognize
open.
yes, a lot will go because we've finished high school, went straight to university, and now we're
Mm.
working. And in my case, I started school when I was 4. So they
So
give
you were young
lawyers
when
that
you finished. Mm.
yes, they give them that opportunity to go to London for a year, which is typical for
Got it.
Australian lawyers.
Mm.
But I remember emailing them after the year. I said, I'm staying. I love this place. Thank you so much. If I ever come back to Australia, of course, Minters is my family. I want to be there, but
Mm.
I moved in mid 2019 in the thick of summer, and haven't looked back.
Wow. And here we are in 2014. So in 2021, you were appointed the CEO of a family office in Riyadh. How old were you when you were appointed CEO?
I was 36.
Now that is that is young anywhere in the world. Tell me about, I mean, I know what the profile of a standard family CEO office of a fat CEO of a family office is. Can you tell our listeners the profile of somebody in your role typically anywhere in the world?
Typically, the average age of appointment is just before age 56, so between 55 and 56. And of course,
Mm,
it's skewed more to the male gender. Historically, investment banking or finance background, not legal. And maybe, someone part of the old boys club type situation.
mm.
Certainly not a Gen Y
So
expat
you haven't got many
female.
peers that or people in the room that look like you.
No, I don't. And but what is great is the global network of the family offices being able to meet colleagues because the role is very, very isolating. And the statistics will never show the high numbers of females in the exec roles. A lot will hold vice president positions because the
Mm,
CEO might be a family member.
mm.
But there are a number of females, but technically they're old enough to be my mother, and I would never say that to them. We call them the cool aunties. Um, but there is a generational gap between
Mm,
me and them, which I can use to my benefit because I have them, as
mm.
a support network.
And you raised another point. You've been, not only are you a very young appointment, you're female, but you're also not a member of the family. So, I mean, that's a trifecta in terms of um, being out of the box as a unique appointment within the role.
And the other thing to add to that is the family I work for is actually a Saudi royal family. And I don't ever publicly name who I work for just because I prefer to have that level of confidentiality
Mm,
because people are always chasing money for investment as well. So the more I can keep it confidential, the better.
mm,
But the family I work for are quite senior, and the father is, he's very well known. His career has been amazing, and he loves it. He will say, Cassandra is, millennial. She's young and she's my CEO. And
mm.
when I heard that, I was just like, thank
Isn't
you.
that great? Mm.
Yes, it is. It
And
is.
that goes against the grain of what the Western view might be of how that's perceived. So that is just fantastic to hear.
That's it. And I mean, we're global. The children, the adult children, the siblings, they live all throughout the world. So my work is not confined to Saudi. I'm in America a lot. I'm in London a lot. Hopefully, we'll be in Europe a bit more coming up. But it's not as though it's a siloed family office only dealing with Riyadh matters and Saudi investments. It's
Mm.
global. And I guess people would say, oh, maybe she was appointed because there was no one else. The thing is, there are so
Could have
many people
appointed
moving
anyone
to
else.
Saudi.
Mm.
There is so, 5 years ago when I came here, people were a bit, oh, what's Saudi? I cannot count the number of messages I get on LinkedIn, emails I receive per week from people wanting jobs in Saudi.
Mm.
Um, so there is the market there.
Yeah. So how do you handle the pressure and the responsibility that comes with a role of this level?
I I mean, it comes back to you have to do it. It's your job. You don't have a choice. You need to get the mandate done. But the greatest subject I ever did at university, and I don't know, it was actually two. I don't know why they're not compulsory for lawyers, but it was organizational psychology and negotiation. But the organizational
Mm.
psychology really helped me because I have a family, there's at least 10 of them, all adults. I have to be able to get the best from them and to get information quickly. So I need to know how to communicate. with them.
Mm.
That's how I get things done, by adopting to their particular, communication methods. Because if I adopted a one approach fits all type situation, I would
No.
never get anything done.
Mm. That's interesting. That's managing a really complex bunch of stakeholders who are literally invested in what you are doing. So there's nothing easy about that.
That's it. The only thing is, I've absolutely hit the jackpot with this family. I mean, I've dealt with so many boards and CEOs as a lawyer, and I don't know if it's the Western way of thinking, but particularly middle aged men don't necessarily want to hear advice from someone 20, 30 years younger than them on what they should be doing strategically and legally. Whereas this family, I will get a message saying, we want to invest in this, won't do anything till I hear back from you, or I want to buy this piece of artwork. I am their first point of contact, because we
Mm.
have that level of trust and they have no issues asking. And that goes for my whole experience with corporate, the corporate world in Saudi.
Mm. That's incredible. So how do you position yourself as a person of influence? And I know that is something that you also speak to as a keynote.
Yes. So I I don't have a strategic plan, so to speak, but knowing my strengths and where the gaps are in the market, particularly when I look at it from when I was a lawyer, what can I offer clients to convince them to change a law firm to come to me? And that come down to a business understanding. I'm not just here to do one file or one matter. Everything we do has to have a long-term objective. So just setting that out, has really helped me position myself a little bit differently. And the other thing is, when I was younger, I read the book Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office by Dr. Louis Frankel.
Yeah.
And it said how women usually, using a game of tennis as an analogy, women usually play that safe shot down the center of the court, whereas men will usually use the whole court and be hitting, straight towards
Killer
the line.
shots. Mm.
So, in a corporate sense, why aren't I using the whole playing field? Taking those chances just to see where I can go. And when I was in my role as president of Women Lawyers Queensland, I didn't just sit around and recite statistics and, oh, law firms need to have a better parental leave policy. Oh, law firms need to provide for breastfeeding. I just put in a policy and gave it to law firms and said, this is what you should have to make your employees stay. And some of them were just kind of like, whoa, she's basically telling us what to do. And I'm like, I'm not telling you what to do. Rather than just suggesting it, I'm giving you the solution.
Mm.
Breastfeeding arrangements. This is what you do. Just make it happen. Because too many people focus on the narrative and what the issue is. Just focus on the result. How can we
Make it
make it
easier
happen?
for
And
them.
just
Wrap
just
it up
do
in a
it.
bow and give it to them. Mm.
Yes,
Yeah.
but you have to know when to do things without asking, and that is a
Yeah.
fine line, because you don't want to offend people, and you certainly don't want to overstep. But if I just do it,
So how do you know that? So you have um clearly positioned yourself as a person of influence and little steps and clearly in significant steps. Does does this come naturally to you? Have you developed the muscle to do it, or have you had a mentor and seen somebody else do it very successfully?
it was more just, if you can see a way to make it happen, just do it. I mean, I know there are rules, and I respect all rules and policies of an organization. But in law, there was kind of an unwritten rule that juniors don't fly interstate to meet clients and things like that. I had I did have an international profile, but I had a lot of interstate work. And so I would just go to my partner and say, I've booked a full day of meetings in Sydney. Please approve my travel. Whereas the traditional sense would be, make a
Would
meeting
I?
with your partner. Could I please do this? And I would just say to him, the flights return to Sydney are $400. If I at least get one client, the file will at least be 5,000. I'm going to do a day trip, so we're not paying for accommodation. It means I'm going to be awake for 22 hours because of daylight savings. But you know what? I just got $5,000 in fees and a new client. Lawyers never used to think like that.
Mm.
So that was one way of just doing it, and hoping I was given the okay after already setting it out. But you have to pick and choose the battles because I'm not a fan of, grandstanding or shirt fronting and things like that. It's just how can we convince them through actions?
So this is just who you are. This is in your mode of operandum quite naturally, because you haven't identified anything other than this is how I operate in your response. So
Yeah,
my read on that is this is just Cassandra 101.
that's it. And I haven't actually thought about it until you've asked that question now, but yeah, I guess it
Yeah,
is.
it is. It's just who you are. Yeah. So let's talk about life as an expat woman in Saudi. How does that differ to if you were doing this role in Australia or London? Does it look any different?
Not the day-to-day role and responsibilities. That does not look different at all. What is different is the cultural aspects and the way women are viewed in Saudi. And that's actually a positive here because never have I experienced such an easy corporate life as I do in Saudi.
You said
At
that
my
when we
first,
spoke earlier, and
yeah,
I find that extraordinary.
yes, and I mean my second day at my first role here. And I was here for the sports and entertainment regulations, and they gave me foreign investment tax and customs, and I'm not a transactional lawyer at all. And my second day, they said, "Look, Cassandra, we're putting you on the foreign investment board." And I thought to myself, hang on, I'm millennial, I'm female, I'm an expat. I'm just going to take notes and fly under the radar because I probably won't have any idea what they're speaking about. We're in the meeting, fast forward, and I was like, oh, hey, I understand this. We need an SPV, we want a JV for this, we've got a PPP happening over here. I'm like, I understand this. And I thought, no, I'll stay quiet. It's my first meeting. Let's just observe, get to know personalities. The CFO, who is a middle aged Saudi man, turned to me. He said, well, Cassandra, you're the expert. What's your opinion?
Expert.
Never, never in the Western world would a middle aged man turn to someone young enough to be his
No
daughter,
way.
call her an expert, and ask for an opinion. And
Mm.
that carried through even into social life. My very first grocery shop, full shopping trolley full of groceries. And the man in front of me had 2 bottles of water. And he goes, sister, sister, please, please. Because I was female, he wanted to help me and let me in first. And this happens everywhere. It's not just pregnant women or elderly women. The men, whatever they can do to help you, they will. And they do it for expats and they do it for Saudi women as
Wow.
well. And
Contrary to what one might think, sitting here looking from the other direction.
that's it. And I love it. I mean, I didn't let that guy go behind me because he had 2 items, but that was a debate in and of itself. But it's just incredible how
Yeah.
welcoming everyone is here.
Yeah. So you found the whole experience to be incredibly positive and both professionally and personally.
Yes, except for the driving. That's probably my only. I mean, it's good because it's fast driving, but it can be chaotic at
Mm.
times. That's probably my only drawback of here is the traffic.
Well, it can't all be good. That's
That's it.
fantastic. Well, Cassandra, such an amazing career journey and such amazing story of success. And don't be afraid if there is a plateau at some point because you've risen so jolly fast that how high is high. So that's just incredible. Could I ask a couple of questions to wrap up today? What is a phrase that defines you?
Oh, I mean, I guess it depends on the mood I am in when I answer the question, but my usual go-to would be ora et labora, which means pray and work. And it doesn't mean that's the only thing you do. The history behind the phrase is how to balance everything in life. I mean, it was from Saint Benedict who said it. So back then, all they had was praying and working. Social life wasn't really part of it. But the
Mm,
ethos behind the phrase is balancing all of your competing commitments to get the best outcome. If I'm feeling a little cynical, I'll probably say, the best help I got was the help I didn't get. But then I reflect and I'm like, I have
mm,
such a good community of friends and colleagues. And it's a matter of asking for help. But if I'm feeling a little bit on a day, I might say that one.
That's fair enough. So, if you were to give some advice to a young woman, young female looking to take the career journey such as the one that you have taken, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them to get them along their way?
Basically, it would be to slow down and enjoy the moment. I was too eager to get to the next step. I didn't take the time to enjoy or experience the step I was in. University, for example, I was working two jobs. I then started in my last year of university full time while doing full time study. I didn't take that opportunity to just be a student and enjoy
Mm,
life. I was always searching for the next opportunity. I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought, once you achieve something, you then go on to the next step and the next step. No, it's okay to just enjoy and experience, what life has to offer at that time. I would love to go back and redo university. There is so much I would have done differently. I'd probably have a lot more close friends from my university circle, which I don't have now simply because I wasn't there and in class. Go to
mm.
class. That is also one of my recommendations, but just take the time to enjoy.
Mm, well done. Well, Cassandra, thank you so much. I know you've got a lot on your plate, an incredibly responsible job. So I feel absolutely humbled that you've made time to talk to us on Power of Women podcast. And I know your story is going to be such an aspirational one for others on their career journey and the upward trajectory to look at what you've achieved and how you've achieved it and the position of responsibility and influence that you hold is just extraordinary on every level. I take my hats off
Thank
to you.
you.
So well done. So if you've
Thank you so
enjoyed
much.
this episode of the podcast and hearing Cassandra's story, which I certainly have, please be sure to share it with a friend. That's how we get the word out there and expand the network. And be sure to subscribe on any of the platforms for podcasting. None of it has a cost, whether it be YouTube, any of them. It's all there to be done for free, and that's how we get the feedback that you're enjoying what we're producing for you. Also, you can jump onto my website, powerofwomen.com.au, and reach out to me directly if there's a guest or a conversation that you'd like to pick up. Until next time.